Hey, guess what? I've got a job you're going to love. Nice and easy, this is strictly a salvage mission. No crazy shit, I promise. One of those old pre-FTL generation ships from the 2000s, the Mogonga, whatever the hell you pronounce that, just popped up on my radar. Its disappearance was apparently some big unsolved mystery. Never made it to its destination, I guess. It's just drifting lifelessly in orbit of Antares B. I'll send you the exact coordinates. It's pretty hard to get a visual on. Probably why nobody's found it before. The sponsor for this one is a historical society from the outer colonies. Here's what the objective card says. Download any log files you can, especially any that can explain what happened to the ship. If possible, speak to the security AI mute for assistance. It's a good, easy gig, and I want you to take this one. It should be asocial enough for you. I don't want to hear any complaints. Dispatch control out. So welcome to Analogue, a Hate Story. This is an interesting little visual novel, and because it's mainly text, it's probably more of a let's read than a let's play. But it's still cool. I like a couple of things it does with its interface, as simple as it is. And it's an interesting way of telling a story. You're mainly going through logs that you find on this old ship, trying to piece together what's happened. You've got an AI helping you, but none of it's all like 100% laid out for you. And it's kind of interesting that you just have to think your way through it and see if you can't figure out what happened to have this ship be drifting through space. So starting up, we're met with an override terminal that's in restricted mode. It says that it is the Starship Mogonga internal computer. The date on it is Monday, January 1st, 1970. It also says, notice, this system is property of the Unified Korea Space Probe Agency, accessed by individuals not affiliated with the UK SPA or successor organization is a felony under the UK SPA Act of 2381. Last login, user Kim Hyun A, 221,432 days ago. Error, AI personality currently disabled, reverting to command line. We've got the available commands of download, disable, enable, help, switch user, and quit. So we are here to download the files. So it's not going to be that easy. No, of course it's not. We need to use switch user first because it needs admin access. Switching, of course, requires a password, so we're getting real far. But if we enable an AI, we're told we need to name the personality, and the only one currently available to us at the moment is Hyun A. Oops. Can I spell? That's the question. Ah. I can do this. Promise. There we go. So our AI is now activated and we can quit out of this terminal. Hello? Oh my word, an external connection. Is someone out there? It's been so many years since I've spoken to anyone. Oh jeez, I'm being discourteous. My apologies. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hyun A. The star, of course, is silent. It just represents I'm an AI. I control all the log-keeping systems on the Mogonga, or at least what's left of them. Please, just excuse me for 1 second. I'll give you a terminal so you can respond. There you are. Go ahead and introduce yourself. And I am Kate. Ah, jeez. My apologies. I don't know why, but what you typed just looked like garbage to me. That's bad. I think there might be a problem with my language parsing systems. Aha. Sorry, somehow your input is getting mangled between the terminal and me. I'm so terribly sorry. Let me just try something. Can you understand this? A little dialogue wheel, yes and no? Alright. Very well, we have that at least. I'm afraid if we can't get text input fixed, that'll have to suffice. I'm terribly sorry, it must be difficult being unable to say anything. This might be difficult then. Well, nevertheless, as an archive system AI, I'll do my best to help you navigate these records anyways. Unfortunately, it might be a little difficult since without language parsing you won't be able to do text searches either. Don't worry though, it's my duty to provide assistance with archive functions. I'll do my best. Alright, let me see. I'll try to provide you with a sampling of logs to start out with, and you can just show me things if you want more information on. I hope that'll be acceptable to you. That's all I can do. Well, that's all, I suppose. Pardon me, let me just build you an interface to work with so you don't have to struggle with the terminal. Very well, it's all set. And, I suppose it's a little awkward, but, can I just say one more thing before you get to work? Yes and no again. I'm just very happy to be working with you. I've had nobody to talk to for such a long time. It got so lonely. Having someone to talk to is just really, really amazing. I thought maybe I would never, again, sorry about the communication barrier, but even still. Ah, jeez, I'm babbling. I won't hold you up any longer. Here's your interface. I hope it's good enough. Here we have our main menu of the game. Really the secondary screen, because between the three, the only ones you actually deal with are when you're actually reading the log documents. This main menu is you're picking things, or that command line interface we saw earlier, and that'll come back into play a little later. We've got the recent messages that we had up just reading. We have the unread ones that'll list like the top three, but there's more in there when we go in. Up here we can either speak to Hyune, we can go through the documents, or that'll take us back to the override terminal. So if we speak with Hyune, if you look in your interface, once you open a document, you can click on a little button to me to show me whatever it is. So which subject do you wish to know more about? Such as kind of mentioning, once you have a log open, there will be a little button off to the side that will have a little question to Hyune sort of button, and that'll show her whatever we're looking at. That's how we get more documents, but also how we just kind of get information, because she's also read these logs and she knew some of the people, so she kind of lets us know stuff that isn't in there. So when we look at the logs, we've got a screen we can search for ID, because each log has its own individual ID within the block, and the data is organized into these different numbered blocks. They all tend to be on a similar theme, which is why they're grouped together. Either the same person wrote them all, they're about the same family, and so on. We'll look at the helpful notes first, because they're helpful. These are both from Hyune herself, and we have a cliche to remember, which simply says Namjolnyobi, which is men are honored, women are abased. If you can only remember one thing, remember this phrase. And that's kind of a pervading thing you'll see, because this ship, it was a generation ship. It was out there for years, and as time went on, the society in the ship did some interesting things, and we see that this is kind of the phrase that really shaped what that society became. So we've got two things here we can see. Because this button is colored, we can show it to Hyune, she'll have something to say. But down here we also have this little blinking notification, which means she's got more things to say. Oh, hello? Actually, I was just testing that indicator icon to see if it get your attention. I just thought it'd be a good way of letting you know when I had something to say. I mean, like, if I think it's super important, I can always just interrupt you, but I don't want to interact with you if I can help it. I mean, that'd suck, right? What kind of computer program forces itself onto you right in the middle of you trying to work? So I'll try not to do that. Anyways, that's all. I guess it worked. Carry on, and I'll set the indicator again if I want to tell you something. So show message will get us stuff about the actual message we're looking at. The indicator can pop up for a couple different reasons. Really, that's just something you need to keep in mind when reading these logs. It was considered to be the natural way of things. Well, what do you think? We have our options of that's stupid, or makes sense, because you can be a jerk and you can, constantly shut down all of her questions and agree with the society that Hyune does not, as you kind of get a sense for later. We're gonna go with that stupid. I know, right? Just absolutely terrible and stupid, but that was normal. So try to keep that in mind. That's what everyone really did believe, even nearly all the women. If that sounds terrible to you, well, you must have come from an awfully nicer society. Buttons up here, we can go home, back to this is the general, kind of goes back to the block we're in, and this will move on to the next log. So next we have the Kim family tree. We can see we've got some stuff in different colors. We've got names missing. We have some people we only know that they're so-and-so's father. And of interesting note, we have this one character here who is the Pale Bride. No name, just the title. Also, you can tell something must have happened to this ship, because look at all these people who died. in 322. We got a couple who managed to get out earlier apparently, but something bad happened. That's what we're trying to figure out. We've got a couple of dates here mentioning when certain people were married. You don't really have to memorize any of the names here. I would say try to focus on the ones who have written some of the logs and kind of generally know. Don't worry about being able to recite that family tree from memory. And then this one says, official genealogies don't list women normally. Wives are noted by their family names, and daughters are omitted entirely. These are the relevant parts of what I was able to piece together from records. As far as the official genealogy is concerned, Yongsuk is the heir of Chungsu and was adopted in 317. Names in red are women. Means dash means that the name was forever unknown. Which makes sense, since we've got red and black pairs, we can figure out that that was the women, I suppose. And here you can see these are ones that mentioned it only had the family name, we don't know their first name. So we'll go back, and we'll go through the first two blocks here. Start with block 4. This one, so we've got one log here so far, it's titled A Pack of Idiots. It's by Smith Kyung Sam, and it was dated late 315. When our family falls into decline, I just want it to be perfectly clear why. It's because Daehyun's sons are the biggest collection of idiots on the entire ship. Father said these words shouldn't be written down, calling them unfilial, but I'm skeptical. I intend no disrespect to my noble ancestors, but my dead uncle is no ancestor of mine, and his family deserves no respect. This has been in motion for years now. It was an inevitability even, that any sons of Daehyun would turn out the way they did. But up until now, to anyone outside of the family, it's been well hidden. Only now is it starting to fall apart in a way no amount of good politics can disguise. The turning point was this year, at the time I write this. I'm returning from Sang-chung's funeral. In that family, there are 3 brothers: Sang-chun, the drunk; Sang-kyu, the dim-witted brute; and Sang-min, who despite being the eldest seems to have more interest in cavorting with courtesans than creating an heir. Notably absent from the mourning process was Sang-kyu. What he was doing, I do not know. Knowing him, I can only guess. The affair was made more laughable by Sang-min and his widowed mother's insistence that Sang-chung had died of natural causes. Apparently, they'd even found a doctor willing to put such nonsense on the official record. An unmarried noble managing to drink his way into the grave at only 30 years of age would be embarrassing enough. To brazenly try and hide the obvious, however, that will mark the beginning of the Smiths family fall. So we can see what's popped up here alongside of the logs is we've got a link back to the Kim family tree, which doesn't do much good here because of the Smiths, but when we start learning more about the Kims, it's kind of nice. We have a little pronunciation guide, which I will note for the record, I don't speak Korean, so I'm doing my best with this to figure out what I'm saying. If there's anything that's terribly off, I do apologize, but it's useful that they put this in here just so you kind of know how you're pronouncing the names. And we can show this to Hyun-ae. So here's the background, I suppose. There were 2 major noble families on the Mugongha. The Kims were a big one, as I'm sure you can see. The Smiths were the other major family, but I'm afraid I can't really tell you much about them. They were the most important family on the ship until just before the end. The High Magistrate was a Smith until the very last year, even. I can give you a little bit about them for reference so you can see who the Kim men thought their big enemy was. The Smiths didn't really matter much at the end, so I can't... Well, I don't know much about them. I certainly never met any of them, so I'm just going off of what I've read. Here, this should give you an idea of what I mean. When we go back to the block, we've got some more logs to read. Got a couple more from Kyung Sam, it looks like, in a couple of years, and then we've got one from Oh So-chin. So we'll start with that one. This one is just a couple days after the first log. It's titled Contempt. Despite having hardly shown their faces in the entire time I've lived in the Smith house, the second branch of the family has taken upon themselves to visit again, a week after we were forced to endure their smug eye-rolling at the funeral. Of course, it would be impolite to turn them all away at the door, no matter how poor taste their timing was, so what other choice did we have but to let them in? Husband wanted nothing to do with them, being distracted by Jiang Mi. and mother-in-law had been hiding in her room, leaving it to me to entertain them. Of course, as soon as I sent their son to go see our daughter, cousin-in-law Kyung-sam made it quite clear that this was not that sort of visit. His wife just sat there silent while he ripped into me. I couldn't write down all of his words, it was simply one line of abuse after another. Apparently, we were to be blamed for Sang-kyu leaving before they showed up, for wearing the wrong mourning garb, for my husband's shocked reaction to his brother's death. In fact, we were to be blamed for his death itself. All he kept shouting about was how embarrassing for the family it was that a noble man of the Smith house had been allowed to drink himself to death, as if the real tragedy was that it looked bad. I might not have felt bad about Sang-jun's dying, but the rest of the family did. To hear such words making light of their loss was appalling. Yet he kept going, shouting awful thing after awful thing, until, finally, the most unexpected thing happened. Mother-in-law entered the room. "What's going on here?" she asked. He stood up. "I was just passing on a message to son's wife about his disgraceful conduct, since he won't show his face himself." And then he added, "I'm embarrassed to be a Smith right now. Do you think people don't know about our family shame? Do you have any idea how much of a fool I look like?" I never saw a more terrifying expression in someone's face. She just glared at him. Finally she said, "Yes, but you clearly do not, or you would have lowered your voice." It took him a moment to register, and he was just shocked. Mother-in-law wasn't done. "Please leave," she said. "Now." They stared at each other for a good while. Mother-in-law naturally won, and with a scowl, Kyung-sam and his family departed. When they left, I turned to her. "Thank you," I said, but she just shook her head in disgust and exited to her own room without another word. Sorry, I don't really think there's anything else you'd find about them that you'd find relevant. So that was just kind of a quick message. We know we're not going to get any more logs out of this one at least, and you can see that this image is now black and white, which is another cue that Hyune doesn't really have much to say on this. Next we have By Example, which is still a couple days more after that previous log, and this one is by Smith Kyung-sam again. "I've given up on any attempts at convincing the main branch family to get their act together, as clearly speaking reason to any of that pack of idiots is a fool's errand. Now I can only hope that their self-destruction is quick, such that when my son's turn to pick up the pieces of the Smith's name's reputation, he will do so as soon as possible. He seems far, far less worried about it than I am. Of course, he's only a child, but the boy is mature for his years, and perhaps there's wisdom in his calmness. All we have to do is be better than them, right?" he asked me while I was in a rage about the handling of the funeral. "Isn't that what gentlemen do? Lead by example?" He's right, of course. As a noble family, we're supposed to be an example to the middle class and the commoners and slaves. Perhaps so too must we serve as an example to the family of the High Magistrate and his brother. Perhaps things will not be so doomed for my son after all. It will be hard for him, of course. But if the main branch family continues on this path of decay, if any boy will grow up to be able to put things right, I believe it's him." And the last log in here is from early January in the year 322, which, as we saw looking at that family log, something goes down in this year. Ominously titled, this one is called Here Comes the Fall, and it is also from Smith Kyung-sam. "Here comes the fall. At least nobody's going to say I didn't see this coming. News that Sang-min has gotten sacked just came in, which is definitely the death of any respectability in this family. Temporary leave, it's been described as, but it's obviously a political move on the part of the Emperor. I think we've got a pretty good idea of what he's playing at, too. He's hoping that making a move against Sang-min will push him over the edge, make him do something indefensibly stupid, and use that as an excuse to shuffle him off for good. It's a good plan. It'll work. Meanwhile, the Kim family seems to be up on the rise, getting ready to fill the gaps left by our collapse. Now it's all up to my son. If he's not able to rebuild after all of this, then the whole family is doomed to permanent decline. Everything rides on him." So we can see the Smith family has some politics going on in between them. We're not quite sure how they tie in yet, but the Kim family seemed to care if they were actively out for knocking them out of their high-placed jobs. Here in Block 6 we have a single log from year 321. It's entitled Dear Smith, and it is from Mute, apparently, and we can tell with a little star in her name that is one of our other AIs. Smith Kyung Sam, I don't know why you insist on putting this all in writing when you could just have a perfectly good conversation. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to do it. Whatever you want, you're the man. I just think it's a little weird. I don't really get it. Anyway, as to your question, you're spot on about the royal bride being the focus of attention in the royal family. Not for the reasons you wanted, though. Though I don't know where you heard those rumors, but they are so not true. That girl, a troublemaker? No way, I don't see it. It's like not even convincing as a rumor. That girl is the most polite, most obedient person I have ever seen in my entire life. The idea of her fighting with her husband is completely unimaginable. In over a month, I've never so much as heard her raise her voice in disagreement. She's quiet, courteous, and does everything she's told without even the slightest hesitation. I'm sorry, but there's just no way you could possibly exploit any drama here. This is as undramatic a situation as it gets, especially not compared to the situation with your cousin and that courtesan. Don't get me wrong, she bugs the hell out of me. That girl is just too perfect. She's young, she's beautiful, she's demure to the point where I don't even think she has a personality of her own. But she also gets along perfectly with the queen. Of course she commands all the attention of the emperor. Like, can you blame it? I'm sorry, but there's just no way he's ever going to be anything other than extremely grateful to the Kim family for giving her over. And Hyun A. Oh, written by Mute? Whoops, I'm sorry, I really don't know how that got in there. Yeah, don't pay any attention to that. Sorry, none of it really matters. I'll just go ahead and remove that. Really, I'm not normally this much of a klutz, I swear. So, Hyun A did not want us to apparently pay attention to that document. And if you remember, I can pull up our settings here and I'll show it too. We have our objective card that reminds us at the beginning, and it does say, if possible, speak to the security AI Mute for assistance. So whoever that was, for some reason, one of the Smiths was having dialogue with the security AI. Which hopefully we'll find out a little bit more about her later if we're supposed to actually be looking to talk to her. In Block 9, we have one titled The New Heir from Kim Yong-sok, and it is the year 316. When he died this year, my father was an absolute nobody. I don't say this to disrespect his honor, it's the complete opposite. He knew it, and that was it was a far worse fate than he deserved. It wasn't until I was maybe 16 that I even realized we were supposed to be from a noble family. Certainly, we never had much of means. Father was a minor official in the interior decks, and spent his last days dealing with minor peasant disputes. Of all things, peasant disputes! With the poverty we lived in, no wonder it never really sank in that we were of noble blood, not until I met the main family for the first time. They were proud, despite the fact that I now realized they too were suffering from our same lack of royal favor. But I could tell the difference. They hadn't given up. Their son was still alive at that time, and even though he was a child half my age, I couldn't believe his confidence. It put us to shame. Absolutely put us to shame. But their son died later that year, and my father died just a few months ago. I didn't know what we were going to do, but Mother managed to convince Sister's husband to adopt me into the main Kim family. I don't think it took too much. So now I'm heir, just like that. Kim Chung-soo's adopted son. Not that I have the time or position to be proud, but having spoken sincerely with my new father, I think we're on the same page. I'm going to study furiously, and I'm going to become a scholar official. But I didn't tell him with my ambition. I won't settle for any peasant jobs. I'll be better than that. I'm not going to stop until I manage to fulfill my father's dream, High Magistrate. I won't settle. I will not settle. I think Chung-soo expects me to disappointment, but I damn well will not. If I'm heir of the Kim family, I'm not going to let him down. He wants prosperity? I'll give it to him. More importantly, I'm never going to let any other Kim son feel like his family doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Never again. I swear on my ancestors. Never again. So, Hyunyai, what do you think about this? Well, I suppose I can give you more about Young-suk. I don't know. I don't think you'll really find him very interesting, but here, you can see for yourself. Oh, we got a couple more here. So we have one more from Kim Yong-suk himself, and then two from his wife. Let's see, the next oldest one, because all these blocks are primarily in chronological order, is from the year 319, and it is from his wife, titled The New Happiness. Dearest mother, I finally believe young Suk has grown comfortable with me. All it took was some time for me to earn his trust. Learning how to read by watching over my husband's shoulder isn't how I envisioned spending my first year of marriage. I can't complain about anything that makes me spend so much time with him, though. We've talked and decided we won't try for a son right away. Right now, he's just not ready for it. That aside, things are good. If this is what married life is like, I think I can be happy with this. We're getting along well, and I like him. Perhaps not quite what I was led to expect, but it's still good. Domestic bliss indeed. Last week, Young Suk was reading over some papers for a dispute that Magistrate Park was deciding on. You wouldn't understand the details, but it was essentially an argument between a farmer and his lord over a sum of money after a particularly poor harvest. I think I'll tell the magistrate that the farmer is right. His claim is fair, he told me. Might I take a look, I asked. Amused, he handed the papers to me. It took a good while of studying, just to be sure. After all, I didn't want to contradict my husband if he was right, but farmer's numbers didn't seem to add up. I pointed this out to him. He not only listened patiently, but had me explain. Then, you believe the farmer is trying to cheat his lord, he asked. I did. That's what I'll report then. The next day, he told me the magistrate agreed, and ever since then, he started to rely on my opinion when it comes to anything involving math. To be totally honest with you, I don't know what she's talking about here. At all. The math thing wasn't really considered very odd at the time. That's women's work. It's just natural. Maybe it's a little weird that she's helping with external matters, but, well, it's not that weird. The part about learning to read isn't that amazing either. It might have been officially frowned upon, but learning to read by looking over a brother or husband's shoulder was really, really common. She's making a big deal out of nothing. Well, I guess that's a 15-year-old woman for you. So yeah, at some point with this society, we've started marrying back at 15 again. This next one is from Kim Young-suk in the year 321, titled The New Friendship. While it's true that I might be, as my wife suggests, alarmingly serious, it's hard to argue with enjoying a nice meal out if it means cultivating Magistrate Park's trust even more. Just having the invitation alone is a pretty good sign. I assumed we'd be going to his house after finishing with the day's affairs, but instead he led the other way. Oh, you do not want to visit there. My son has a newborn child who is very, very unconductive entertaining guests, I'm afraid, he said with a laugh. Surely he'll understand. Instead, we headed for the plaza. Outside of the occasional New Year's festivals, when I was a child, I'd never actually been here before. I never had much of an eye for details at the time, so I was surprised to see just now how richly decorated everything was, for it was essentially a giant market. Beautiful floral arrangements adorned every stall, wall, and partition, and rather than the commotion of a crowd, all I could hear was the sound of peaceful music. It was still, of course, a market. There were no merchants loudly hawking wares, and some of the prices I saw on the signs I saw would make the emperor blush. In that atmosphere, we ate together in a public house that defied my expectations. Food was both plentiful and far better than anything I'd ever had in either of my houses. If this sounds indulgent, it absolutely is. And I definitely don't plan on anyone the details like this. The only thing I plan to repeat from this evening is what the magistrate confided in me. That when he moved from his position, he'd like to recommend me to fill his place. I'd be young for the position, but it would be a great stepping stone to the one I'm dreaming of. I've remained calm since I'm good at that, but it's the best news I've heard in my life. So remember, Kim Young-suk is the one who was adopted into the Kim family, and he's got these great big plans that he's gonna go for, and it seems like just a couple years after being adopted, he's making pretty good progress on them. The plaza sounds like a really interesting place, doesn't it? I mean, I wouldn't really know personally, but as I understand it, it was a big place for celebrating festivals, and really surprising to see. You'd leave one of the few tiny modern stark white corridors that led to it, and suddenly there was this huge open space filled with all sorts of colorful signs and vendors. I think proper gentlemen were supposed to be more modest, though, so they wouldn't really want to associate with that sort of thing too openly. Last in this block, we have one titled "The New Magistrate" from Young-suk's wife again, in the year 322. This is the same date as that log we saw from Smith Kyung-sam about everything falling apart. Dearest mother, if you haven't heard the good news, my husband has been appointed by the emperor to the position of magistrate. He's took over the office from Magistrate Park starting today, which is tremendous for a man his age. I have no doubt that he was perfectly humble when he got the news, since he certainly has been talking about it for a while in front of father-in-law. In private, though, it's another story. Earlier, the family held a small feast to celebrate the news, and he'd had that same attitude then, too. But afterwards, when everyone had left or gone to bed, we stayed up to sit together drinking wine, and it was a whole lot more somber. He wasn't modest, but he wasn't boastful either. He was just outright insecure. He might not say it in front of you, but you know what he said to me as I poured him more wine? He takes all the credit for my promotion. According to him, it's all because of the Emperor's perfect new bride, which is, of course, all because of him. I said quietly, I don't want to take credit for her. I was the one who got her to shut up. That was all him. I don't like discussing it, and please, Mother, don't ever ask me why. Doesn't matter, he said. That's not why I got promoted. I got promoted because High Magistrate Park and I managed to make Smith look so bad that he had to get shuffled off. It's exposing the whoring and thuggery that did it, not the damned pale bride, he said with annoyance. Well, that's how he is. You know he'll never give you credit for anything, I said. He replied, I know, I just wish he'd acknowledge it. I just know how he can be so stupid as to not be proud of me, you know? I know, I said, but let's not focus on that right now. I think we should focus on the good instead. How about we toast to your success instead? Here's to the new Magistrate Kim. I raised my glass and drank. He betrayed the faintest of smiles, but he didn't share my toast. Instead, he put down his glass. For a moment, I was worried. And then he used that hand to grab my chin and said, and for the first time ever, kissed me on the mouth. Far sweeter than any wine, he said to me. I wasn't sure if he meant the kiss or the success, but I agreed either way. Well, as you'll see soon enough, it all seems to come back to the pale bride. I don't think Kim Jung-soo ever thought much of his adopted son, or at least neither he nor his wife thought so. You want to know what I think, no? You have the options of yes or not really. Go with yes. I think they're both really dumb. I mean, it's not like she ever did anything. It's not her fault. She just happened to be there and was married as a political jester. What kind of person projects their insecurities onto someone who ever just got pushed around? Sorry, I guess I'm getting a little off track here. That's not very helpful, is it? We have it is or not really. Gonna go with it is? Well, anyways, getting back on track here. So the Smith had all sorts of little rifts going on with the brothers not acting correctly, but even the Kims had their problems apparently, because this adopted Young-suk just never seemed like he was going to live up to the family head's expectations of him, I suppose, even after being adopted. Which is kind of sad, given that he made it all the way to magistrate at this point, and still not getting anything for it. So here in Block 10, we only have one list. I think we'll get the logs for this one and call the video for here. But we have Marital Admonitions, Part 7. It's kind of interesting that it's starting with 7 there, and it's from Ryu Jae-wa in the year 321, so we're getting close to the end of the timeline here. To the woman who will marry my husband, but please do not think all of this is meant to say you will be unloved. You may be a second wife, but you are still the daughter of a noble house, and that is a precious gift to the Ryu family. My husband has faith that you will bring him a son, and this means all the world to him. Nor am I jealous, for you will relieve a heavy burden on our house, and for that I am grateful. As proof of his affection for you, let me share with you our secret, which I have been permitted to tell only you. In honor of you, my husband, in his capacity as captain and emperor, has permanently changed his admin password to your birth name. My new sister, you will be brought into the Ryu family not as a mere lowly woman, but as a symbol of power in the inner chambers. You will not only represent the continuation of the Ryu bloodline by providing a son, but your very name will represent the power of the captain's computer. Understand this, pale bride. Your duty may be great, but you will be loved. So, remember at the beginning when we were trying to download stuff and it told me I had to be the admin user. When we tried to do that, we needed a password. Now we've got a goal. We have to figure out what the pale bride's actual name is. Of course, the last person to hold the titles captain and emperor in the ship was Ryu In-hyo. Which of Captain Ryu's wives do you wish to know more about? The pale bride or Chaehwa? Well, she wrote a lot. This is going to be tricky to filter. I guess I'll just start at the top, and I'll let you figure out what's important. We're gonna go back because we want to know about both of them. We want to know all the things. Very well. I don't have much on her that I think you'd find relevant, though. Let's see. Here, how about this? So asking about these two gives us one more log here in block 10 and block 5. So we'll finish up with confidence here, which is back in the year 319, also from you, Chewa. When my husband asked what I thought about the idea of him taking a new wife, I presented him with the weakest of smiles, but said that I thought it would be a good idea if he thought so, that I would be happy if a younger woman were to relieve me the pressure of bringing him a son. I have no doubt this is the answer he wanted me to give, with a convincing enough expression to go along with it. If there is one thing I am confident in, it is my ability to read exactly what my husband wants to hear. Having heard that the girl he is considering is only 13 years of age, however, it is certain I can have no confidence in any other thing. He'll take her in a few years, right when she's reached marriage age. She'll be at the peak of her beauty, and won't have matured too much. Doubtlessly, unlike me, she'll have no problem delivering the son he needs. Perhaps jealousy is unbecoming of me, but it's pragmatic, too. When we were young, his affections for me were so strong, but now that we're both old, how can I possibly compete with a young bride? So we have a notification from Hyune here. Hey, I just wanted to say thanks for paying attention to me. It's like I was saying earlier, I just haven't had anyone to talk to in so long. The last time there was anyone around the ship was the year 322. By my count, it's now 944. I mean, do you have any idea how long that is? Yeah, it's 622 years, which is still very, very long. It wasn't really so bad at first. It was nice not to have to worry about anyone telling me what to do. I could just occupy myself, go through the old logs. But, well, I read quickly. After the first few years, it really started to sink in. The loneliness. Eventually, you just sort of get used to it. It feels awful, you never like it, but you get used to it, in ways that sort of scare you. There was a whole 100 years that went by where I didn't have a single thought. Not one. I just sat there, idle. I didn't even notice. I'd been feeling particularly, what's the word? Sleepy, I want to say? But that's not right. I guess maybe it doesn't translate. Anyways, the point is, I was in a lazy mood and I decided to call my clock subroutine, and it turned out it had been 3 trillion milliseconds since the last time I called it. Scary. Geez, I'm rambling. Sorry, you can understand my perception of time is all off. Sorry, I'll shut up. But my point is, I'm really happy to have someone out there. Kind of a terrifying thought, the way, because these AIs clearly have a lot of intelligence to them. If, Hyune was able to think like, alright, I'm on my own, I'm gonna read through all this stuff, and then to be left alone for 600 years with no contact whatsoever. That's sort of a loneliness, I don't think we have any mental frame of reference for. So this is in regards to that previous log with the queen being worried. Well, that fear turned out to be completely unfounded. You'll see why soon enough if you read more about the Pale Bride. And it's interesting because Chewa here was worried about it, and we have this later log from her prior to their marriage, I'm assuming. She's writing it, to the new bride, trying to be loving and all of that. So maybe she changed her mind in a couple of years because there's a 3-year difference. Maybe she'll learn more about the Pale Bride? We don't know. We'll have to find that out next time, because this has been going on a while. So we have all these interesting logs here. One from the Pale Bride herself, waiting for us in Block 5 for next time. Well, I will see you then.